Jesus, you can have all this world. You can have all this world. Give me Jesus. When I am alone, oh, when I am alone, when I am alone, give me Jesus, give me Jesus, oh, give me Jesus, you can have all this world. Give me you can have all this world. Give me Jesus.
And good, bright, and beautiful morning. It is nice and bright today. And ironically, it was like 83 degrees yesterday, and today it's going to be in the 60s. So this has been some weird weather this summer so far. But what I do know is that it is bright, it is beautiful, and the main reason for that is because God is in it. And welcome to Easy Bible Study. I'm Kimberly Mann, and I cannot wait to get to know you a little bit better and for us to dig into God's Word together as well. So we are going to be in Genesis chapter 21. So grab your Bibles, grab your notebooks, and let's talk about somebody who's a recurring character, because not a lot of recurring characters in Abraham's life, but this guy comes back for a second act. So we'll talk about him in just a second. Be right back after this.
You can have all this world. Give me Jesus.
And welcome back. If you do find any value in this content today, do me a favor, click like, subscribe, turn on that notification bell so you don't miss any of my content. And most importantly, share. If you come across one of my shorts, share that. If you want to see this today, this long form, go ahead, this live broadcast, share this. But more importantly, any of the Bible creators that you are seeing that resonate with you and that are speaking truth, we want to share that because it matters who you're speaking to, and it matters that we share the Word of God to as many people as possible. So one of the first things that you should learn as a Christian is to share God's Word with others. And for newer Christians, which is primarily who this channel is created for, is for Christians who are newer in the faith and are just wanting to learn about the stories and the basic theology. One of the easiest ways that you can share at the beginning is to just take videos like mine and share them to your timeline. And are like-minded, I guess, is where I was kind of thinking like-minded and like-mind at the same time. So absolutely go ahead and do that. Now, today we are in the second half of Genesis 21. So let's grab our notebooks. For those of you that may not have been here before, we always grab a notebook because we want to make notes on what God is saying to us, or at the very least, just kind of like write down what it is that we're talking about. And unfortunately, for some reason, that page of mine doesn't want to work. So I'm going to turn to a different section of this notebook. This is a specialty notebook. If you're not familiar with the Rocket Book, it's what I use. They are reusable, and it's really nice because you can scan them with your phone, and that way you can take your notes anywhere with you because they are hosted in the cloud. And in this case, if you are a member of my channel, you can actually, so if you've subscribed through Patreon or any of my other membership sources, you do get access to all of the notes that we've done for all of the books of the Bible. So if you've just joined us recently, we're in Genesis, but we've already done James, we've already done 1 Peter, 2 Peter. there's other books coming, of course, as well. We're going to cover every single book in the Bible, and then we'll probably start back over at the beginning and go through it again, because there's always new things that we can learn from God's word. But it's going to take us a long time to get through the whole Bible. But you do have access to every single note. So no matter which, so if you've seen me live today, but you would rather go look at the James and you want to have the notes from James, go ahead and let me know. And actually, I don't think we have the notes for James yet, because we didn't start doing this quite yet. So when we go back and do James again, we'll have notes for it. But definitely for 2 Peter, we had them. And for 1 Peter, I believe we had them as well. So anyway, we are in Genesis. So go ahead and write at the top of your book, Genesis 21. And then we always do the verses. So 22 through 34. Now, the reality is my handwriting's not great, but if you're listening along and you're seeing my notes, it'll help trigger it in your mind. And you will have it all yourself. So if you don't have a notebook, or you're watching this somewhere where you don't have paper and pen and you don't even have your own Bible with you, it can be really helpful to be a member and be able to pull up the notes as you wish. All right. So let's get into this. Let's read our passage today. Ready? And let's go. And it came to pass at that time that Abimelech and Phicol, the chief captain of his host, spake unto Abraham, saying, God is with thee in all that thou doest. Now therefore swear unto me here by God that thou wilt not deal falsely with me, nor with my son, nor with my son's son, but according to the kindness that I have done unto thee, thou shalt do unto me, and the land wherein thou hast sojourned. And Abraham said, I will swear. And Abraham reproved Abimelech because of a well of water which Abimelech's servants had violently taken away. And Abimelech said, I wot not who hath done this. Neither didst thou tell me, neither yet heard I of it, but today. And Abraham took sheep and oxen, and gave them unto Abimelech, and both of them made a covenant. And Abraham set 7 ewe lambs of the flock by themselves. And Abimelech said unto Abraham, What mean these 7 ewe lambs which thou hast set by themselves? And he said, For these 7 ewe lambs shalt thou take of my hand, that they may be a witness unto me that I have digged this well. Wherefore he called that place Beersheba, because there they swear both of them. Thus they made a covenant at Beersheba. Then Abimelech rose up, and Phicol, the chief captain of his host, and they returned into the land of the Philistines. And Abraham planted a grove in Beersheba, and called there on the name of the Lord, the everlasting God. And Abraham sojourned in the Philistines' land many days. All right. So one of the first things I do want to do here is I want to look up Beersheba in our lexicon. So we're going to go to the way back of our Bible. If you have the same type of Bible as I do, you can do this. If not, it's fine. You can just follow along. But I have a Hebrew Greek Key Study Bible from Spiro Zodhiates, sorry, I should look at the right camera, which there is a link in my description that if you want to buy it, you can go to my Amazon store and you can purchase a copy for yourself. They are a little bit expensive. They are leather bound. They come in lots of different versions, but I use the King James Version because I like the beauty of the language. But if you find a different version works better for you, I'm not one of these KJV onlys that says only the KJV is inspired by God. No. The Bible is inspired by God, and quite frankly, only in the original text. These are just translations of. All right, so we're going to look at the lexicon, though, in the back, and the word Beersheba is number 884, which means it's right in the first couple of pages of that lexicon, because it goes up into like the 8,000s. So, all right, we're on page 15, 884. And what it is this is just the dictionary. All right. Beersheba, in the sense of well of an oath. So the word Beersheba means well of an oath. All right. So we need to keep that in mind, that we're going to have the word Beersheba mean well of an oath. It means this is a well where we have had an oath or a covenant together, which is, of course, appropriate given what he's doing. So first of all, let's look at the fact that if you remember Abimelech, and maybe if you haven't been with us, just a couple of chapters back in chapter 20, Abraham and Abimelech had a confrontation because Abraham made an assumption about who Abimelech was and the kind of person that he was. He assumed, which we always know, you should never assume. And we talked about that. So go back a couple of things. That was, I think, last week that we covered that. Abimelech, he assumed that he was going to kill him. And Abraham keeps doing this because apparently Sarah must have been a knockout woman, because when she had a baby at 90, he was just before that, he was still scared that somebody would take her and kill him for her. So I can't even imagine how gorgeous Sarah was. She must have been like supermodel gorgeous in the world's in the eyes of the ancient world, because Abraham was constantly afraid, and not for bad reason, because we already have seen the Egyptian king take Sarah to wife, or she was Sarai at the time, but we've seen an Egyptian pharaoh take her to wife. And now we saw Abimelech in chapter 20 take her as his wife. But both of them were deceived. Both of them, they were told that Sarah was his sister, which she is. She is his half sister. All right. Don't judge. It was part of the ancient world, and God was okay with this because they had to propagate. They had to actually build the world. You kind of had to marry cousins and things like that. We don't do that nowadays because there's no need to. But it's not actually because the Bible says that it's wrong. It's more about, we now know enough about genetics to know that it's better to mix up the pool a little bit. But Abimelech is the king who, or could be the same king that took Sarah to wife, and it does seem like he is the same. Now, there are some people who are like, well, this Abimelech isn't the same as the other Abimelech because, Abimelech was really more the title, like saying King so-and-so. But that doesn't seem to be the truth. And it does say that at Abimelech and Phicol, the chief captain of his host, spake unto Abraham, saying, God is with thee in all thou doest. This same guy is likely to be the same Abimelech. And the reason we say that is because it hasn't been that long since we saw him. Like, Abimelech wasn't that far off. It's only like a year earlier that he had encountered him. So the odds are this is the same Abimelech, or maybe it's later on, because we do know that this is only, okay, sorry. So Isaac had not yet been conceived when they met Abimelech the first time, but Abraham had been circumcised, I believe. So we know that Abraham, yes. So Abraham had been circumcised, which was when Ishmael was 13. And between that and Isaac being born, there was only a year, and that's when he encountered Abimelech the first time. So now we know that Isaac is born, which is a year later. We know that he was weaned because they threw a great big party, which means that's now maybe 2 to 3 years on. Ishmael's been put out. That was part of the story yesterday. But we're really only looking at about 3 years, maybe 4 years, 5 years tops between these two stories. Just like to be really generous, let's say this all happened a while and it came to pass at that time. So we don't know exactly how long there was after Ishmael was pushed out and Abraham had his second encounter with Abimelech. But it does seem like it was pretty much within a really short time period, probably within about a 5-year time period. And that's because we do know that it was less than 13 years for sure. Because the next story that we're coming up to, Isaac is, what is he? He's about I believe we think that Isaac was like just below teenagery, somewhere in that age. So we don't know entirely. We don't know entirely how old Isaac is, but Isaac is old enough that he's talking to his dad and he's picking up wood and he's helping dad and he's very cognizant of everything that's going on. So Isaac is aware, he's a very aware and conscious. We're thinking that he's somewhere around 10, 11, 12, 13, somewhere in that age range. And so we do know this story about Abimelech takes place before that. So Isaac's only about 2 years old when Ishmael, max of 2 years old probably, when Ishmael is pushed out. And when the next story comes, which we're not going to go into today, we'll do that tomorrow. When that story comes, we're not entirely sure how old he is. I don't remember. And I haven't read the whole next passage, but we do know that he is, you know, he's definitely of an age where he understands everything that's going on, and he's helping his dad pick up wood. So he's maybe 10, 11, 12, 13, somewhere in that range. So between that, we have the story of Abimelech, very likely the same Abimelech, because either that or else his father died, and this is the new Abimelech, the new king that has come about. Let's see here. Yeah. So we do know that at the very least, but we think this is probably the same Abimelech. And it came to pass at that time that they spake unto Abram, saying, God is with thee in all thou doest. So the first thing we see here in verse 22 is that Abimelech recognizes God's hand on Abraham. So we already know now that Abimelech is a man of God as well. First of all, he recognizes God, and not only does he recognize God, the God of the Bible, the God of all, as the one true God, he recognizes that God works through Abraham and that God has laid his hand of blessing on Abraham. And so it's when he says this to him, it is more like he's greeting him. It's more like he's just giving him a greeting. This statement is more like a greeting. Think of it like where people would say, God be with you. Well, that's what this is. This statement is more like a greeting in the ancient world. It's more like he's saying, what's up, Abraham? He goes, hi, Abraham, I know that God is with you. He blesses you. He's with you. And I have a proposal for you. So verse 23 is where he gives out his proposal. And he says, now therefore swear unto me here by God that thou wilt not deal falsely with me, nor with my son, nor with my son's son, but according to the kindness that I have done unto thee, thou shalt do unto me and to the land wherein thou sojourned. Now, this is the other reason we think it's the same Abimelech, because when his encounter with Abimelech previously, Abimelech had, let's see here. What did he do? He took sheep and oxen and men servants and women servants and gave them unto Abraham and restored Sarah his wife. This is back in 20 verse 14. And then he goes, and to Sarah he said, I've given thy brother 1,000 pieces of silver. So he's given him silver. He's given him servants. He's given him animals. So he's given him all these things. And so he's like, hey, look, I did you a solid. Putting this into the kind of the more a little younger vernacular. Please don't pretend. I'm not pretending to be cool. I'm not cool, but it is what he says. He's like, look, I did you a solid by giving you all these sheep, etc. When we resolved that issue with your wife, with me taking your wife when I didn't know she was your wife. But you know what? I recognize that God was with you because God came to me in a dream. So I did you a solid by giving you all these things. Now do me a solid. Let's make a promise. Let's make this more formal. I gave you all those things. You sacrificed. You prayed to God for me, and I've prospered as well. But I want to make a covenant. I want to make a pact with you. I can see that God is obviously with you because, look, you now have a son, which you didn't have before. And Sarah's 90, or was 90. You were 100 when this son is born. This is amazing. God is obvious. Only God can make that happen. That's why we're laughing about it, if you remember from before. So he goes, it's obvious God is with thee. Now swear unto me. So make me a promise, he says. That's what I'm going to put in the notes here. Make me a promise that you'll deal fairly with me, my sons, and my grandsons. So what he's doing here is he is making a treaty. He's really saying, it's like you're a small city nation. I'm a small city nation because I'm a king over a region. and I want to make a pact with you. I want to make a pact with you. I want to make a covenant with you that covers me, it covers my son, and covers my son's sons. So my grandson as well, because God is clearly with you, and I want to align with you. And this is a really smart thing Abimelech is doing, because what Abimelech is doing here is saying, I want to have fellowship with somebody who is a godly man, but not only just for me. I want my sons to have fellowship with a godly man. I want my son's sons. And this type of a promise, this type of a covenant would transfer to Isaac and to any sons Isaac. It would go from the sons to from the men to the sons to the grandsons. This covenant would last for all of them. Not just between them, not just that Abraham would be bound to treat the sons and grandsons well, but that Isaac, and then further on when we get to that part, Isaac's son, we'll talk about who that is later as we get into Genesis, but that Isaac's sons would also be in this treaty with Abimelech's family. So this is a long-standing, this is like a couple hundred years type treaty. We're signing a treaty that's going to last a couple hundred years. That's what Abimelech is asking for here. So he says, and Abraham says, I will swear this. So pretty simple there. Pretty simple verse. If I could write, that would be easier. So, verse 24. Abraham says yes. All right. However, verse 25. Abraham goes on, but he reproved Abimelech because of a well of water which Abimelech's servants had violently taken away. He goes, yes, I will do this. I will make this treaty with you, but we got a little issue. I got some of your servants stealing my wells. Now, that's not cool. Like, yes, I will make a treaty with you, but you got to talk to your servants. They took away my well, and they did it violently. They did it with force. They didn't just walk up to the well and start using it. To take it violently means that they pushed Abraham's servants and Abraham off of the well with weapons and by fighting them. Because it says they took it violently. He goes, but we have a little problem. With these servants. Who took our well. All right. He's like, they took it. Like, they took it and they took it violently. We got to deal with this. And Abimelech goes, whoa, seriously? He goes, this is the first I've heard of it. Abimelech pleads innocence, ignorance is actually the right word. Abimelech pleads ignorance of this event. He's like, Abimelech said, I wot not who hath done this thing. Neither didst thou tell me, neither yet heard I of it, but today. He's like, I didn't know anything about this. Yeah, you're right, Abraham. That's not cool. You're right. You did a solid by me, and now my servants went and violently took your well away from you. That's not cool. I didn't know anything about this, though. I didn't hear anything about it. They weren't stupid enough to tell me, and that's probably the truth. The truth is these servants, whatever the situation was that happened, they may have taken it violently from Abraham, but they did not do it with Abimelech's permission, for sure. And so he says, whoa, he goes, neither heard I yet of it, but today. He's like, I didn't know anything about this. We'll get this taken care of, basically. Verse 27. So because Abraham realizes this, Abraham took sheep and oxen and gave them unto Abimelech, and both of them made a covenant. So they sealed the deal, and this is pretty regular in the ancient world. They sealed the deal with sheep and oxen. All right. And Abraham set 7 ewe lambs. All right. So this is interesting. All right. 7. I am having the hardest time writing down what I actually say here. This is crazy. All right. Abraham took 7 female sheep and made a special gesture with them. Now, I'm going to talk today a little bit about what that means. In the Bible, and this is not the first time that this has happened, but it's the first time where it's become significant, where someone says, hey, what does actually that mean? What's the importance of that? What's going on here? And he actually says, he goes, Abimelech said unto Abraham, what mean these 7 ewe lambs which thou hast set by themselves? He's like, what does that mean? Abimelech asks, what does that mean? He's like, I don't get it. Why are you setting these 7 aside? He said, for these 7 ewe lambs shalt thou take of my hand, that they may be a witness unto me that I have digged this well. He goes, now, what you may not know, and some people, okay, we need to be very careful with this, because in the Bible, there is a lot of ability to step into something that is an abomination, and that is numerology. So there are special numbers. So we're going to talk about, let me talk about a couple different religions here. We're talking about Hinduism, and we're going to talk about numerology. Numerology believes, and it is a religion. I realize that some people who practice numerology don't think of it as a religion, but it is a religion, because numerology is a belief system that governs their life. And I don't know how else you could define a religion outside of a belief system that governs your life. And that is based in faith as well, because there's no empirical scientific evidence for numerology. But numerology believes in the significance of certain numbers, and that certain numbers mean certain things, and that they always mean this. And if you have this many bumps on your head, or you have this many this, or you have this many that, this many days, and there's all this complex thing that all has to do with numbers. And that's the basic of numerology. If you want to know more, you can absolutely read a book. There's loads of books out there about numerology. I would just caution you, as a newer Christian, that you don't want to delve into numerology, because it is actually, it is something that can lead you away from God. So I don't necessarily encourage you to deep dive into it. But if you want to learn the basics, you can probably just do some Google with AI, with Gemini or ChatGPT or something like that, and say, hey, what is numerology, and what are some of the basic tenets of numerology? And you could probably find that out. Secondarily, Hinduism believes in what they refer to as auspicious items. So first of all, you might have an auspicious pen. I had a client who was Hindu, and as a real estate agent, and lovely, lovely couple. I'm sad that they were Hindu in some ways, because even though Hindus believe in one God and then many gods underneath it, kind of a thing, but the Hindus do believe that there is a God. They do stray away from the Christianity and from the gospel and from the Bible. They don't use the Bible as their basis, because they, it's just not the base. The base of their religion is not the Bible, but they do believe in special days and special numbers. So they will use the term auspicious. So something that is auspicious or lucky is how another word in what we would call Americanism would be if you think something is a lucky pen, or it's a lucky day, or it's a lucky. Now for them, it is based on calendar dates, and it has to do with your birthdays and your this date and that day. And it's like a whole, almost like an astrological chart that is put together for different people. And if you're in a couple, then you, in order even to get married in Hinduism, your auspiciousness and like the days need to match up for you to be a couple. You can fall in love if you want, but if you're not meant to be, you go to somebody who tells you whether you should get married or not, whether you are a good match according to Hinduism and according to these auspicious dates and days and the signs of your life. And so, they're very much into it is a superstitious, in the same way that numerology is a superstition. However, there are numbers in the Bible that have and carry significance. They're not quote unquote lucky, like you would see in numerology or Hinduism, but they are significant. So you need to understand the difference between significance and luck. So there are certain numbers that communicate certain feelings or certain ideas, and 7 is one of them. The number 7 is the number in the Bible, and we see it repeated over and over. It is the number of perfection or purification sometimes. And if you remember, there were 7 of the clean animals that went into the ark for Noah. And now we see 7 ewe lambs that Abraham is giving to Abimelech. And the reason for that is because it is a completion. When we say perfect in the Old Testament, we're not using the word perfect like as in they are without blemish, but we are saying they are perfect is that they are complete. And that is the same thing we see in Genesis 1 when God is making the world, and Genesis 1 and 2, when God finishes the world, there were 7 days. And so there is significance to the number 7. So whenever you see the number 7 specifically done, like for a specific purpose in the Old Testament, you know that it's saying this is complete. So when he gave him 7 ewe lambs, what it's really saying, what Abraham's really saying to Abimelech is, these 7 ewe lambs mean our covenant is complete. It is perfect. It is sealed. This well is mine. You've given that back to me. And these 7 lambs signify that this well is mine and that this is a completed transaction, that this is complete and that we are united in this. And so Abimelech asks what it means. And verse 30, Abraham says, and he said, for these 7 ewe lambs shalt thou take off my hand, that they may be a witness unto me that I have digged this well. They are the evidence of a completed transaction. So essentially he's kind of buying back his own well, but he's like, nope, that's fine because this transaction is also the covenant. It goes, wherefore he called that place Beersheba. Remember what we said? We'll go back to that lexical aid, which is on like page 16 or 17, 884. Remember, 884, it means well of an oath. Okay? So when he calls it Beersheba, in verse 31, it's Beersheba or Beersheba means well of an oath. They swore their oath by this well. They transferred the 7 sheep as a witness or as a transactional, not payment per se, but as a recognition of this transaction. As a recognition of something. I think what's really cool is I have seen some parents make oaths and covenants with their children and using the number 7 as a witness. For example, a parent makes an oath with their child and they bind a covenant that maybe that child has made the covenant and the oath that they will not have premarital sex. They will not have sex before they are married. And they make that covenant and that oath. And sometimes parents will do things to seal that. They'll give them a purity ring. They will give them, and they said, look, the only time that purity ring comes off is when your engagement ring goes on. That doesn't mean you're not still remaining pure until marriage, but obviously that you might want to wear them both together, and that on the night of your wedding, that purity ring comes off, and you are then given to your husband or your wife, because there are boys that do that too. I think it'd be very cool if that purity ring had like a 7 etched on it, because that would be a sign of an oath being completed. So, or maybe had 7 little diamond chips or something that signifies that completion or that sealing of that oath. Would be kind of cool if there was some way to add 7 to that. Or maybe they give them a necklace that has the number 7 on it as a symbol. But that's what he's saying. He goes, this is the well of an oath. And these 7 sheep, these show that this transaction, this is complete. This is perfect, because 7 is the sign of completion or perfection. All right. And so they called this Beersheba, thus made a covenant at Beersheba. Then Abimelech rose up and Phicol, the chief captain of his host, and they returned into the land of the Philistines. So after they make this deal, Abimelech and Phicol, his chief, who really, we don't see him doing much of anything here, but you know what? He's probably the muscle to make sure these herdsmen of Abimelech did do what they're supposed to do. Don't do this violent stuff. All right? And Phicol, they return to their home. So that also tells you that he came out of his home just to have this conversation with Abraham. And what does Abraham do there? He makes it even more permanent. He plants trees by this well for a more permanent symbol. And Abraham planted a grove in Beersheba and called there on the name of the Lord, the everlasting God. And Abraham sojourned in the Philistines' land many days. All right. So here we have Abraham plants trees by this well. So he and Abimelech have made this covenant. And what this passage tells us a lot about is about the fact that godly men, there's a number of things we can take from this passage. First of all, we can take the idea of when we make a covenant, we should give something in exchange for it. And we do. When we get married, we exchange rings. That is actually a symbol of a covenant between a husband and a wife. My husband and I actually have a rule. We don't take, I know a lot of people will take their wedding rings off, and they will do that. Me and my husband, we don't do that. We have a specialty thing. So here's my ring. Me and my husband and myself, it was a tradition that my parents started that I have continued. My husband and I do not remove our wedding rings. If we do need to remove our wedding rings for any reason, we do not put it back on. In fact, I do not put my wedding ring back on. And in fact, it's a little hard to get it off even if I try. But that's part of what happens, is that when you don't take it off ever, it's hard to take it off, which is a protection against infidelity. Because if it's hard to take it off, I mean, you can even see when I take my ring off, look at the indentation here where the ring sits. I didn't take it off all the way. If I don't slide it all the way off, then I don't have to do what we do. But we have a rule that we do not remove our rings from our finger. And if we do have to for some reason, like, okay, maybe I do need to clean my ring, right? Or my husband needs to take it off because he's doing a project that it would be dangerous for him to be wearing his ring, or something like that. I am the one who has to put that ring back on him. So actually this happened. My husband was recently in the hospital with a stroke. I think we told you guys about that a couple of weeks ago. He's doing so much better. Thank you, Lord, Jehovah Rapha, the God who heals. But when he was in the hospital, he had to have a CAT scan. He had to have MRIs. So they took his rings. They took his necklace off. They took those things off of him, gave them to me, of course. And he had to put his back on, but he didn't, because he knows our rule. It's the same rule for me. If I take my ring off for any reason, he's the only one who can put it back on. I'm the only one who can put his ring on him. So I had to do that for him a couple weeks ago, but normally he doesn't take his ring off. Now, we might occasionally loosen it like I just did, give that space on your finger some breathing room, but our rings aren't all that expensive, and they're not difficult to give breathing room. We twist them around regularly. I do wash my ring on an occasion, but I actually don't wash my ring as often as most people would think. I know there are women who take their ring off every night. They put it by the bedside. I know there are women who take their ring off when they're washing dishes and they put it by the sink. To be honest, I would be afraid I would lose it if I did that. That's the kind of person I am. But secondarily, I like the symbolism of having the ring on at all times. And that's my covenant with my husband for that. So he plants by this well for a more permanent, I forgot to put the word permanent symbol here. He plants trees by his well for a more permanent symbol. So he gives the lambs and he plants the trees. And those are his symbols of this covenant that he has. And then it just winds up the passage by saying in verse 34 that Abraham continued in that region. Now I'm going to show you the map so that you know where that region is, because Beersheba is one of the things we have on our map. So let me pull the map up and let's see if I can get this up. There we go. So you can see and kind of see, because I've zoomed in on a little bit much probably. Let me see if I do this. Let me see. There we go. Now you can see it. There is Beersheba right on the bottom here, just above the desert, just about going to Egypt, but not quite. And there is Beersheba. Still to this day, it is referred to by that name. So this is Beersheba and Hebron, Bethel, Jerusalem, etc., all going up here. But there is Beersheba. So this is the land of the Philistines, or Philistines. Depends on what you want to call it. Some people refer to it as Philistines. Some people call it Philistines. It doesn't matter how you pronounce it, as long as you recognize what the tribe is that lives there. But this is the area right there, Beersheba, which is kind of cool when you think about it. We actually do know where that is. Kind of like we know approximately where Sodom and Gomorrah are. We absolutely know where Jerusalem is. So Abraham continues in that region. Abimelech and Phicol goes back to their land. And yeah, so that's what we're talking about today. And hopefully that has been of some value to you. And let's see, we'll take that off. There we go. Hopefully this has been of some value. You've learned some things about this passage. A lot of people think this is just, oh, ho-hum, a little just kind of sort of type of story. But actually, this story is packed with a lot of symbolism. It's packed with a lot of meaning. Two godly men getting together and making a covenant for generations. That's a good thing too. And I do think that can be really helpful. I think it's very helpful for godly men to get together and say, we're going to build each other. I'm going to recognize you are honored by God, and I'm going to recognize you are honored by God. And we're going to raise our families that way. And I want your sons and my sons to get along. I want my grandsons and your grandsons to get along. I want us to treat each other fairly and long term, so that honoring God can continue for generations. And that's all Abimelech does here, is he goes, I recognize your godliness and I want to make a covenant. And Abraham goes, that sounds good to me. Let's do it. And so they do. So hopefully you have learned some things from this about covenants, about the number 7, about what Beersheba means. I told you this passage is packed, even though it's really short. So if you do find any value in this content, do me a favor, click like, subscribe, turn on that notification bell so that you don't miss any more of my content, and yeah, share. And hopefully you've been able to share this with someone else as well. And I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow when we are in chapter 22, which is an extremely significant story in chapter 22. Packed full of symbolism that points us to Christ in the New Testament. So we'll be back tomorrow right here. I'll see you then. Bye for now.
You can have all this world. Give me Jesus. When I am alone, oh, when I am alone, when I am alone, give me Jesus, give me Jesus.